small group are pretty awesome. Oh, is that my face? Like a bad what are you calling that? Oh, you're rating. Got 10 right there. I'm off to a good start. That's pretty good. I'm not going to wear this hat. Grateful that you guys are here. Just a little bit of permission, okay? So I tell this I give some talks to high schoolers and middle schoolers, and they're a little bit more antsy than you guys probably are. If you have a desk job, I imagine you're accustomed to sitting. But I tell these guys, like, you need to get up at any time, for any reason, or do something to get more comfortable than do it, because you're not just here to be taught or lectured at, you're here to receive from the Comforter, the Consoler, the Holy Spirit. So I would encourage you to get up and use the bathroom, call your wife, whatever you need to do. Sound good? Great. I'm sorry that you're listening to me today. The person who was supposed to give the talk is a man by the name of Father Larry Richards, who maybe some of you guys have heard of before, others maybe not. And he was unavailable, so you get me instead, and that's pretty good. So, I'm definitely working. Oh yeah. You see any mustaches around the room? You can shake those men's hands because they definitely know what they're doing with their lives. Joseph's over there, a couple others in the back. But yeah, guys, I'm excited about today. We're going to be talking about the culture that we're living in right now. Why the culture is the way that it is today, historically where that comes from. The philosophy of the day. Now, if you don't like history or philosophy, I'll do the best I can to make them exciting, okay? And how the church is supposed to respond, and then how we individually are supposed to respond. Does that make sense? Yeah. So before I dive into that, I'm going to tell you guys a story about me, because I'm awesome. No, I'm just kidding. And I was a punk in high school. So any fathers of high school kids? 1, 2, 3. Keep them up if they're a little punkishness sometimes. Yeah, great. You're looking at them. Probably worse than your kids are, for being honest. My dad was in the last session. He sat right there, and he was just awkwardly smiling as I told the story the whole time. But I did a lot of ridiculous things in high school, and I liked the attention that came with doing ridiculous things. I liked being the hero in the story. We'll get to that later. But I liked attention, and I liked when the girls thought I was awesome and wanted to date me. I liked when the guys would invite me to hang out and had multiple evening plans to choose from on a Friday or Saturday night. I know this sounds like a distant some of the memories, but for me it's only a few years ago. And I liked the attention, so I would do ridiculous things. And when I was a senior, did anyone ever hear of the game Water Wars or Senior Tag? Or a couple Assassins, another name for this game. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so when I was a senior in high school, we played this game. I went to a large high school, about 400 kids a class. And the way the game works is you pick a partner, and you and your partner are assigned to 2 other people, another partner pair. Over the course of the week, your job is to shoot them with a water gun. And if you're able to do this, get both of them out, and one of you, the partner, stays alive, and guess what? You make it to the next round. Congratulations. And this process continues until there's a single partner pair left, and they get like $3,000. And that's amazing. And so I was super excited about this because I had the opportunity to win a few $1,000 right before college. Also, to get a ton of attention from people in my high school. That's all I cared about at the time. It was all about me, all mine, right? So I was fired up about it. And I picked the one kid in the school who, he's like almost cool. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so he's like a little awkward, but not totally awkward. He like knew stuff about you that you didn't tell him, and you're not really sure where he found it out. Like he's that probably. No, I'm just kidding. And his name was Jeff, and Jeff was he was kind of weird. So me and Jeff we concocted a plan. We were gonna get out ahead of Water Wars, right? So the first morning of Water Wars beginning, we were gonna get our targets out, and then just sit in our houses for the next week. About 5 in the morning, not Tuesday morning, I woke up. And I was dressed in all black. Clearly I hadn't grown out of that phase yet in my life, right? And I put a black ski mask on, black hood, black gloves. I spray painted my water gun black. The water wasn't black, but everything was black, okay? And I got in my 2001 Honda Odyssey white minivan. And I drove through my neighborhood, a few streets around, and I got to Musket Trail. And on 16 Musket Trail lives a beautiful, highly intelligent, innocent, kind of awkward senior girl named Melissa. And Melissa was unfortunately one of my targets. All right, so I get out of my minivan, I park a few houses down, and I walk over in the dead of 5:15 in the morning, night, to Melissa's house. Give me a thumb if you have a keypad on your garage door. Anybody? Yeah, everybody, most people at least. Okay. So Melissa's house did not have a keypad. It just had a button. Just a button. You hit the button, the garage door was opening up. I don't know why this was the case, but it was. So the garage door opens up around 5:20 in the morning, and I step over the laser on the inside, and I reach out, and I hit the button, and garage door closes. I'm inside her garage. The sensor has not been activated for a couple minutes, so the lights, they turn off. And there's two cars in the garage, one's on the left, one's on the right. I don't know which is Melissa, so I crouch down in the middle between the snowblower and the lawnmower. And I sit and I wait. And I knew around 6 o'clock in the morning Melissa was going to have to come out the front, the door to the house and get in the car and drive to school, so I wait. About 10, and I'm sending like Snapchats to everybody, okay? Because I'm getting as much attention out of this as I possibly can, right? So I wait, and after about 10 minutes, the door opens. But I don't see pink Converse sneakers. I see shiny black dress shoes. And they walk into the garage, and I'm sitting there like terrified, like a little bit of peeking. That's a weird joke, I don't think I'm sure. That's what happened. And I'm sitting there, and I'm literally terrified because I have this all black-looking gun. And if the father of the house sees me, I'm getting injured. There's just no getting around it, okay? So I'm waiting. And he walks into the middle, opens the door of his car, which is to my right, gets in, hits the button that opens the garage of his car, drives out, I'm motionless, hits it again, the garage door closes and the sensor light turns off. I made it. I wasn't got by this guy. I was so excited. More Snapchats, more Instagram videos, everything, right? About 10 minutes later, the door to the house opens again. I'm still crouched down, but this time I knew it was not going to be trouble. I waited for her to hit the button and opened up the garage door. And I sprang up. Yeah! I sprang as fast as I could, and books fell out of her hands. It was amazing. And I got back in my car, and I drove back home, and I went back into my bed, because I definitely wasn't going to first period, because I was a good senior in high school. And it was great. And about 10 minutes later, this is where my dad gets involved. He comes into my room. And he's like, Conall, you need to come downstairs. And I was like, shut up, I'm not doing that. He's like, no, you need to come downstairs right now, and don't tell your mother. And I was like, when he says those words, those almost never come out of his mouth, so you know it's serious. So I start walking down the stairs, and I see at the bottom of the stairs to the front door, shiny black dress shoes. But don't worry, it's not what you think. Because the slacks that he's wearing are brown. And as I'm walking down, I can see more of his body. Holster, badge, button-up shirt, flip. And the officer goes, are you Conall? And I said, I sure am. He goes, are you in high school? I said, I am. And he goes, are you in Waterworks? And I said, 3 strikes, right? And he goes, yeah. We got several calls from neighbors this morning of a man wearing a black ski mask driving a white van while kids were being picked up for their buses for school. If that was you, we're going to ask you don't do that anymore. So that's what happened. I got away with it. I have a picture. Our tech's not working. I know. And I have this amazing video I wanted to show you guys too later in the session. So you're going to get my voice for a whole 45 minutes to an hour. It's going to be great. But yeah, it was a mess. My brother actually snapped a picture from the back of the bus as he was driving to school that day. So much attention. It was amazing. But why do I start with a story? Because here's the key. Stories are part of who we are as human beings. We see the world through the lens of story. It's built into who we are. And there's a specific kind of story that is definitely present. The battle between good and evil. Good is very smart, wise men. Here we go, evil. Yeah, the battle between good and evil. Give me some examples from the culture. The battle between good and evil. Movies, anything, books. Oh, I thought it was a hand. Someone else. Give me an example.
Lord of the Rings.
There you go. Pretty good. Yeah. The Lord of the Rings. Another one. Anyone else?
Harry Potter.
Packers. That's a good one. The Packers are really winning that one right now. Praise the Lord. Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Exactly. Any others? Marvel, Narnia. Star Wars. I don't know if I'm repeating things. But yeah, the battle between good and evil is throughout all of the entertainment that we view. And the best movies are inspirational. Even the movie Miracle. It's a hockey movie, but it's still the battle between good and evil, right? Well, why are these stories so inspiring? If you listen to Jordan Peterson, then you already know what I'm about to say. But the reason that we find those kinds of stories inspirational is because they remind us about something that is true about us. It wouldn't make sense if they inspired us unless they spoke to something that was deep inside. And if it's deep inside, then it must be real. I believe that you and I are part of a cosmic drama, a story that's unfolding in our lives. This is the story the church presents, at least in her teachings and in her tradition. I don't know that it's the story that's being taught by the wide church right now. So I want to share with you guys another story to help us get to where we are today. All right, we're tracking. How am I doing so far? Doing all right? Good. Okay. So let's talk about the time that Jesus came onto the earth. I know this is an abrupt change, but track with me. Jesus comes into history at what time? 0 AD, that's very smart. But what's going on? The Roman peace, the Pax Romana, they call it. Rome is an empire, and it's dominating the world. And in my public school education, which is more or less true sometimes, and I hope I don't offend by saying that, I learned that it was peaceful because there was no wars or anything going on. The reason there was no wars going on is because Rome was such an oppressive authority that any rebellion that would break out by good-meaning people from their own tribe would be instantly squashed out. Had no chance. It's like the ancient world of America. Persia might have been China, they're like a distant second, right? Rome is really the power of the world. So if you were going to rebel against Rome, you were in serious trouble. Okay, well, what are some other characteristics of ancient Rome? Sexual morality was non-existent in the ancient world. Some of you are probably historians and know this better than I, but slavery was extremely common in the ancient world. I mean, it was considered to be commonplace, and it was expected about anyone who had any kind of money or authority. Slavery is one thing. Sexual immorality for sure. I mean, if you had any kind of influence, you would have children who you use for sexual pleasure. I know this is graphic, I'm sorry. Bear with me. We're going to get something really exciting later, okay? We're going to go low for a second. Sexual immorality is common. If you were the woman of a society that had been conquered by the ancient Romans, you were subject to the ill will of any soldier or Roman citizen that deemed you desirable of the woman. If you were the husband of that woman and you defended her, death. No one messes with Rome. Rome is the authority. Some other characteristics of the ancient world. The government was corrupt, to say the least. I know we have corrupt governments today too, but at least the ones that we live under are designed by pretty good principles and reasons. In the ancient world, you were totally at the whim of the ruling authority over you. So yeah, the emperor, he's far away in the center of Rome. You're under a tribune, who he appointed, but all that tribune cares about is getting a promotion from the emperor. So all he cares about is maintaining the what? The Roman peace. So your authority over you is no interest in who you are as a person at all. Personal rights, non-existent. Unless you're a Roman citizen. But that was a pretty high standard. You had to be male, of age, educated. There's a lot of things there. Okay. Anything you see in our culture today that is messed up, commonplace in the ancient world. Homosexuality, rampant in the ancient world, right? Infanticide, rampant in the ancient world. Messy, dirty. It's into that world that Jesus came. So if you've ever fallen, if you're a sinner, and you mess up, and you're dirty, God can never love you in this. I have to hide this from him. I can't let him in, something like that. I want to propose that if Jesus can go into ancient Rome and redeem it, he can handle your mess. Yeah? This is the side. I get really excited about this. The camera's going to have a hard time keeping up with me as I get excited. But Vatican City is a symbol to the world of what? Christianity can conquer anything. If we can go under the the musings of ancient Rome and take their capital as our own capital, we can fight and defeat any battle. That's why the Lord, I believe, chose Rome to be the capital of his church. It's a sign that the church can't be defeated. The gates of the netherworld will not prevail against the church. Really exciting. Okay, so Jesus comes into this ancient world. And he starts a church. You know the story. I'm not saying anything you don't know. Starts a church. And their job is to share the gospel with a culture that is super contrary to the teachings of the gospel. Sounds familiar with us today. Remarkably, they have tremendous success. They were willing to die, literally, for their faith. And not just some of them. All of them. Baptism in the ancient world. They would take a person and they would submerge the person underwater, and they would hold them there until they almost died. And they were naked, by the way, which was another weird thing. And then they would pull them out of the water, and they would gasp for air. And that moment was significant because it delivered a very key message. You're a dead man. You're a dead man. You're dead to your sin. You're dead to your old ways. You live for one thing now. And you're alive only in Christ Jesus. Behold, the old man has passed away, and new things have come. It is no longer I who live. It is Christ who lives in me. Which means I will follow the will of Christ no matter the cost every single time. That's my commitment as a Christian. So the church paid a lot of prices because that attitude doesn't jive well with ancient Rome. Because those kinds of people are willing to piss off the authority. And they did. A lot. Read the Acts of the Apostles. Amazing story. Not just a story. True. So you're in the ancient world and you're one of those disciples and you set up this church and it continues to grow and you gain influence in the culture over time. And you're still being persecuted, but the church is bigger now and it's not as attacked as it had been the first couple centuries. Early 300s, the church was still being persecuted, but they were also living in society as well. Maybe similar to today. And they had influence in the emperor's course. There was a Roman, some of you know this story better than I, but he had influence with the emperor. The emperor's name was Constantine. The Romans were facing a really big battle. A battle that they're nervous they're going to lose. And that's a big deal, because Rome doesn't lose battles. So they're not willing to risk their pride in a loss. So the emperor hears this Christian who whispers in his ear, paint a cross on every shield that's used in the battle. Okay? The emperor does it. He paints a cross on every shield, and the Romans destroy in the battle. Huge victory. Gives them the next 30 years of dominance in the greater world, right? Constantine is so moved that he makes Christianity the religion of Rome. And so for the first time in human history, the Christians are no longer being oppressed for their faith. Now, if you're not a Christian, you're oppressed. Total 180. And it happened very rapidly. Okay? Some people really liked this. Most people, you and me would probably like this. Some people didn't. Some Christians didn't. Why? Because in the early church, it was understood. The high gift of Christianity was martyrdom. God couldn't give you a better gift than to die for the faith. The church has always taught that. The greatest crown you can receive as a Christian is martyrdom. And that was no longer going to be afforded to these men. So what did they do? They fled into the desert. It was called leading the world. They started religious monastic communities together with fathers. A white martyrdom. You guys have heard all this before, probably. But the church exists in this new mode. It's the expectation of the culture that you're a Christian. And so what happens? The camera, keep up. The whole culture pushes you in the direction of heaven. Everything around you, the government, business and commerce, the schools that you're in, everything around you pushes you towards heaven. The way that people see reality is guided by the principles of the kingdom of God. And this is totally different than in the pagan days before, where under a pagan world, everything about the culture is pushing you away from the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking at today. Because there's two different kind of perspectives that a person can have as they look at the world. One is guided by the world of flesh and the devil, called an apostolic age, when most people see the world through a non-Christian lens. One of them is Christendom, where most people see the world through a Christian lens. Okay, let's talk just really briefly. I'm going to read to you guys a little bit about what these two look like, okay? You've heard this before, but in a Christian society, you'll see things like this: crosses and nativity scenes in stores, Bibles in hotel rooms, modest clothing on most people. The movies and the music of the day, they promote a kind of Christian telos. I'm thinking of It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Christian story. And it was a huge movie, wild success. At the time, still is today because the message is meaningful, but we'll get back to that. Moral things, like abortion is illegal, gay marriage is illegal, contraception is illegal, divorce is illegal. The laws of the government resemble the laws of the church. To rebel against Christ costs you something in a Christendom society. Artwork, magnificent. You see Gothic cathedrals that people today spend lots more money than they should to tour at. Beautiful, ornate art. The art today is, any modern art fans in the house? Great. It's gross. No, it's disgusting. It's just like I don't know, you've heard this joke before, but a kindergartner that could make something better, or at least on par with what we see. And they get millions of dollars for it. And there's conspiracies behind why that is, but that's not space talk. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But anyway. In God we trust on our currency. Christendom. Everyone's thinking the same stuff. Okay, let's talk about an apostolic time. Time where Christian ideals are not the view through which we see the world. Okay. The modern culture pushes an anti-Christian narrative. The scriptures, there's a lot of them. If the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. The world is the enemy of God. That's James 4:4. There's a lot of scriptures on this. They make a lot more sense in an apostolic age. Popular celebrities engage in activities that are completely immoral, and they do that. They do unashamed. Music, the movies, the clothing, it's all very, licentious, revealing. It points to a different ethos than the Christian ethos. It's all about this gratification of the flesh. All about me. Laws begin to change. There's 4 things I talked about: divorce, abortion, etc. Those are legal. They're encouraged, even. So there's basically these 2 different prevailing views that the church has experienced. And I want to situate us soundly in one of the 2 and explain how we got to where we are. I'm of the belief that we live soundly in an apostolic age. Christendom doesn't exist anymore. I don't really see any evidence that it does, other than that we still have parishes that are open and functional, though you can question whether the word functional is an appropriate word for what they're meant to be, right? Because something happened, well, let's just paint this like this. First 300 years, apostolic age, very clear. Constantine. Christendom, for a long time. Something happens in 1438. Are there any historians in the house who know? Joan of Arc, no? Reformation, no. That's coming, huh? Chris, tell me.
Is it the French Revolution?
Not yet, that's coming too. Anybody else? Not you, you were here last time, yes. Printing press, that's exactly right. Well done, yeah. Okay, Johann Gutenberg, I learned this in high school. I know, my dancing's a little awkward, but it's fine.
What happened in 1438?
The printing press was invented by Johann Gutenberg. Great question. And what happens is people are able to share ideas with the masses in a way they hadn't before. Because up to 1438, who was able to communicate ideas to the plebes? You and me. The government and the church. That's it. They're the only ones who have the ability to influence the minds of the culture. Okay, well that's not true anymore. And just like every other tool that men can use on the face of the earth, they can use for good, and they can use them for bad. Pride. It's in you. It's in me. It can influence actions. And it did with a certain man about 100 years later named Martin Luther. Protestant Reformation. Okay, so what's happening at the Protestant Reformation? The idea is simply this. We no longer need to go to the authority of man to get to God. I know better. Get that authority aside. I can go to God directly myself. Protestant Reformation. Protestant theology today. I don't need the church. Faith alone. Get the authority out of the way. Let's fast forward a couple hundred years. See, that bad idea led to worse ideas. French Revolution, exactly right. There was a philosophy that's introduced for the first time. You've heard it maybe. It's called humanism. But what does humanism suggest? Humanism suggests that, okay, we don't need the authority of man to get to God. We don't even need God. We can be the authority ourselves. We know what's best for us personally. We don't need any authority at all to tell us. In fact, you and me, this human race, we're on a destiny going somewhere absolutely amazing together, and the only thing that can stop